Tyler Durden and Soldier Boy, two characters that at first only seem correlated by the representation of masculinity, but when you look deeper, are almost exact reflections of each other, only walking different paths of life. Their motivations for actualization, their self-endowed idea of carving out their own potential, and the ways in which they became the people they were by the end of their respective arcs are very similar. So much so that they both nearly feel like the same person with simply a different source of power, all because both of them are a proper representation for what power can lead a person into becoming. How it can corrupt by targeting and tarnishing the ideologies of a person and perceivance of ourselves that we uphold, and how it can enable you to tap into the most extreme parts of your conscience, which have been molded by your own walks of life. By first simply taking a look back at Fight Club, we can already see this being laid out in front of us. When the narrator's condo is blown up by what is later revealed as being Tyler's doing, it's done for two reasons, because the narrator and Tyler are halves of one whole themselves. For one, the narrator wishes to be free, and as such Tyler within him does so to give him the push of meeting up with him later in the bar, leading to Fight Club and eventually Project Mayhem. But secondly, Tyler wishes to liberate himself. The narrator has taken a backseat in his own life and is just drifting by. Tyler, in essence, is this personality created within the narrator's mind, who, as he says in his own words,
"I'm free in all the ways that you are not."
And as such, Tyler is free in first allowing himself to take control of the wheel by knowing but more so accepting how to do so, and taking the action he has to in order to unshackle the narrator and himself from this constantly looping cycle of life. At the end of the day, he's just a personality in the narrator's body, but Tyler knew that if he wanted to truly achieve that freedom, then
It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything.
the narrator couldn't have done this because
Things you own end up owning you.
he had to rely on Tyler because the narrator himself didn't have the courage to carry out what needed to be done. Yet it also has to be understood that the narrator and Tyler themselves are still one and the same. One of them harboring their true desires, the other with actions to complement them, to carry them out. With Soldier Boy, this is much in the same. When Soldier Boy, or Ben as he's referred to, opens up to Butcher about their individual daddy issues, he says how his father never cared for him.
I went to boarding school. Got kicked out of boarding school because I was a fuck up. But he made sure I knew it.
He never even laid a hand on Ben because he couldn't be bothered, thinking of him as not even being good enough to carry his name.
He said I was a disappointment.
And as such, Ben went to Dr. Vought and got enlisted in the trials for Compound V.
I became a superhero. Strongest man alive.
And Ben did all of this. He took the V and depended on it because he thought it could make his dad feel that he was a worthy son, someone worthy of loving and caring for. But what happened?
He said I took a shortcut. That a real man wouldn't have cheated.
His father only despised him more. Just like the narrator relied on Tyler for his craving of liberation, who was more than him, Soldier Boy relied on the V, which now became a permanent part of who he was, something also greater than him. All to have his father love him, his greatest desire. From here, Tyler's freedom and Soldier Boy's purposelessness only laid the seeds for the kind of men they would transform into. Shifting back to the side of Tyler, he, now in control, informs the narrator of what he, but more so a reflection of what the narrator himself, desires.
I say never be complete. I say stop being perfect. I say let's evolve. Let the chips fall where they may.
Tyler wishes to free himself and others from subduing their frustrations. He doesn't want himself and men at large to just be sheltered in the world, as he wants to be released from the emptiness of life, not life itself, to fight the world's worthless consumerism and depressingly numb social order. He wants himself and men to gain a purpose, and to do that, they must let go to grow. He understands that men must suffer, reject comfort and safety to evolve, for one cannot be a man without hardship, and one cannot experience hardship without facing the elements and storms of life. Tyler wants to prove they're alive. He wants to prove their masculinity, which leads him to the iconic fight with the narrator and the eventual co-founding between the two of Fight Club. And when we look at Soldier Boy, or at least from where he went after the failure to please his father, these principles are present almost note for note, albeit in a different manner. Ben is a person now plagued by being seen as a disappointment, and the frustration and discontent that follows from it. He may not show it, but it's always been there and stayed there, front and center in his mind, even after all these years. Like anybody in this scenario, he wishes to be free of these inadequacies that torment him and his perception of self-worth, because there's still an emptiness in his life, a void made by his father almost impossible to fill. He wishes to be a man, prove to his father, but even more so to himself, that he can be, and as such, he becomes a full-time hero by joining the Soup Team Payback as their leader, and joining the war in order to be a soldier, to gain something he can take out his frustrations by being a part of, by fighting, but also to become someone with a purpose, to grow into being a person who would lead a group of people, even though he encounters many faults of his own during said leadership. He understands he must face and endure like a true man, unlike the wealth he was born into. He feels that by refusing the sense of safety that he was so used to, he could evolve into the kind of person his father wished him to be, one that Ben himself could be proud of when he looks in the mirror. To his father, Ben is as good as dead. He knows that he's alive, but he wants to prove that to his father. Intrinsically, he still wants to prove his worthiness. Tyler and Soldier Boy both follow more or less the same methodology and ideologies to give reason to and justify that they are men. But whereas Tyler is doing so for himself, as he is carefree and without any need to satisfy anyone else, Soldier Boy is the polar opposite. Deep down, and to this day, he still wants his father's approval, who is now long gone, which ultimately hinders him from truly being a man, as he still feels the need to prove to someone else that he is one, unlike Tyler, who wants everybody to prove that they are men to themselves. Soldier Boy can't let go of that part of himself, that need for approval, which is holding himself from being truly carefree to begin with. On the other hand, however, Tyler has done so long back. He destroyed such parts of himself that were hindering him from becoming a man, that too with his own father.
Fathers were models for God. If our fathers failed, what does that tell you about God? We don't need him.
We don't agree.
Fuck damnation, man. Fuck redemption. We are God's unwanted children. So be it.
Tyler understood that in order to grow, to go beyond, you have to cut a part of your current self off.
Self-improvement is masturbation. Now self-destruction.
But Ben never went through with that step. He never allowed himself to be truly free. He never changed his motivations for why he wanted to become a man to begin with, because at the end of the day, it was always about his father. He could mask it all he wanted behind the idea that he simply wished to prove he could be a man to himself, but that fundamentally wouldn't be possible because Ben's reasons for why he became Soldier Boy never truly changed to ones of his own, ones of himself. This kind of self-deception is what broke him further, becoming just a deviated version of the man he thinks he became. Because to begin the necessary self-destruction to develop into one, you first must break this cycle of deceiving yourself in any regard, be it in purpose, in motive, in yearning, anything. But Ben didn't do that. He never accepted the fact that the void in his heart left by his father couldn't be filled, and that the only way to move on from it was to cut it off from him completely. Tyler fought for himself, to become more. Ben, even though joining the war, fought for his father, even though he never seemed to directly ask him for his approval. Hell, even then, it's assumed in the boys that Soldier Boy didn't even fight in the war, and that it was all really just for show, which perfectly reflects the falsification of reason he had and the wish to become a soldier and a leader. That's why even though both Tyler and Ben are men, only Tyler is free and Ben isn't, allowing one to become the person he was truly meant to be fulfilled, versus the other simply being that which he felt he had to be, in turn becoming more empty than he ever had been before, fueled by a purpose which isn't entirely based on his own aspirations in the first place, exactly like the narrator's initial misguided obsession and livelihood within material desires. However, even though both Tyler and Ben followed similar paths yet harbored conflicting reasons for their journey of self-actualization, the two of them fell from their ideals much the same. When Tyler founded Fight Club, he did so to give men a chance to break free, promising the chance to give them an autonomy of thought, only to have them end up becoming mindless droids who follow Tyler's every command. As their leader, he promised them freedom, only to shackle them to becoming obedient to him. Tyler conditioned them to a principle which he knew he could never give, and as such they would never embody. The members of Fight Club all felt attached to Tyler because they all desired to overcome the figurative yet inevitable debts of themselves. That being that who they are, what they stand for as people, their aspirations and efforts that they put into their lives was wasted, becoming another forgotten subject of the system and existing in this consumerist society. Ultimately, they wish to gain reason for their inescapable death.
First, you have to know, not fear, know that someday you're gonna die.
And Tyler, in their eyes, was the provider for this kind of salvation, someone who would give them said reason. As a leader, Tyler knew he was powerful, like a symbol that under any filter to these men would seem as one trying to help them, whom they could latch onto. And that is what Tyler used to his advantage, destroying the paradigm of independence and individualism he instilled within all of these men, only to further his own. All this time, he wasn't working towards building other men up, but only using them to strengthen himself, to achieve his own end goal, rather than give these men the ability to find and accomplish their own. This goal of Tyler's being Project Mayhem. Tyler carries out Project Mayhem because of his own idea that the modern consumerist mentality must be completely overthrown as they prevent men from going into their true identity and reaching their genuine potential. And as such, Tyler feels that a literal destruction of society and its programming must occur in order for people to be able to be free to control their own destinies. To achieve this, Tyler commands his crew of men to bring chaos to the world by destroying public property, museums, and by the end when he dies, even the skyscrapers of the forefront companies who were furthering this consumerist society. On the other hand, Soldier Boy's fall is really no different. When Ben joined Payback and became its leader, he became a symbol for all of America, the perfect representation of the ideal American and what everyone should strive for through what Vought displayed him as: noble, heroic, selfless, and most of all, human, especially with the way his death was reported in the media as dying trying to prevent a nuclear meltdown during the Cold War. In many regards, Soldier Boy became that who the world looked up to, almost like Tyler and his followers. But just like Tyler, Ben was also wearing a facade of promise. In this regard, the embodiment of the protection he brought, as he never even fought in the war to begin with, along with the facade of the perfect American he embodied, that everyone during his time wished to have been like. This is seen from the most minor things, such as how he advocates for saying no to drugs, yet indulges in them to the highest degree himself.
Remember, real heroes don't use drugs. If taking drugs is uncool, I'm the most uncool motherfucker on the planet.
All the way to him being a power-hungry leader, not tolerating any sort of opposition or objection from any other team members of Payback, as is seen with his aggression and cruelty towards Black Noir simply for disagreeing with him on the idea of a role. He became ruthless, no doubt fueled by his own issues with his father. And this kind of conform or face wrath mentality goes to show the sheer brutality that Soldier Boy truly possessed and extreme treatment of people he adopted due to the life he was now thrust into as a hero for Vought, all because he wanted to please his father. And this, tying into his leadership, is what ultimately spells his initial downfall. His constant mistreatment of the team encourages them in organizing a scheme to take him down, which turns out to have been successful, with him then ending up in the captivity of the Russians. And just like Soldier Boy, Tyler also ended up dead due to a failed leadership over his first and most important follower, who was also the true leader of Fight Club in the first place, the narrator, who pulled the trigger, allowing him to be finally truly free and in control of his mind. In essence, Tyler Durden and Soldier Boy perfectly represent failed leaders and what power can lead one into being tainted into. As Abraham Erskine said, the serum amplifies everything inside. So good becomes great, bad becomes worse. For Ben, the serum was Compound V. For Tyler, it was the people who joined Fight Club and subsequently his cause, and in both cases, it made them worse. For Ben, this power corrupted the person he was, making his purposelessness and sadness transform into hatred and ruthlessness. The boy he was before could have been someone with a genuine heart of gold, but ultimately that and his newfound status and powerful position as a leader just fed the vices of his mind, making him a bitter soldier, but not truly a hero. For Tyler, these men who he sought to liberate, to go through a metamorphosis like he did, after a while only seemed to fuel his true goal. His promoted ideology that was the reason everyone was drawn to him in the first place began to fade, and ultimately became a mission that in reality only he ever believed in, but was always supported due to an always abiding supply of power, which only pushed Tyler further and further, as the radicalized men that joined his ranks began to grow alongside Tyler in his zealotry. A project to cause as much mayhem in the world as possible, as that's what the magnitude of Tyler's power radicalized his ideals into, or possibly simply unlocked these extreme ideals which were already present within him, thinking that the world must be accelerated into destruction to begin anew, which ultimately led to that of his own. Now, is this to say that Tyler and Soldier Boy were never men in any regard whatsoever? No. Tyler's strength, carefreeness, and initiative he takes within his life to evolve and go beyond, and to ultimately start Fight Club, does show the kind of masculine capability within him to reject the worthless consumerism and debilitating modernity of the world and to become greater. And on the side of Soldier Boy, his resilience to keep pushing through life even after his rough childhood, the regret he feels for accidentally killing innocent people and wanting to do better when he came back, and his will to keep his promise to Butcher in taking down Homelander, even though he learns that he's his son, shows some persisting level of humanity, along with the sheer willpower and unwavering strength that his character possesses. That even though Soldier Boy is a bully, he isn't pure evil like Homelander. The two of them became a prime archetypal model in their respective worlds of hope, freedom, and ideal. But what still must be remembered is that they both accurately represent a perfect lie, something that you wish is real but could never be, something within someone that you believe in that was never there to begin with. Both Tyler Durden and Soldier Boy are characters that represent a wake-up call to men and people at large to embrace their inner strength, but also to never give in to the extremism and ferocity commonly fueled by the darkest corners of one's psyche, because all that the both of them were, all that they began as, and the very code that the two of them stood for, completely dissolved when the prospect of greater power tarnished it and corrupted their mentalities beyond repair.